In this video, we're going to talk about some really big news about the HBO prequels, Netflix's The Witcher, and Dan and Dave's departure from the Star Wars franchise and moving full-time working for Netflix for a mere $250 million for 5 years. Subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you can get the latest news and analysis of fantasy TV, such as Game of Thrones and The Witcher. Okay, it was announced today that the creators of Game of Thrones, Benioff and Weiss, better known as D&D or by their critics as Dumb and Dumber, took off their development deal with Lucasfilm and Disney to create the next Star Wars trilogy. They had started this relationship while they were still filming and producing the awful season 8 of Game of Thrones. Won a mere 12 Emmys last August while they were still supposedly developing this next Star Wars award-winning franchise. They signed a 5-year, $250 million deal with Netflix after working for over a year with Lucasfilm. But suddenly here in October, they decided that producing shows for Netflix and feature films for Disney Lucasfilm is not a part-time job, and they have to concentrate on their contract with Netflix. Quote, there are only so many hours in the day, and we felt we could not do justice to both Star Wars and our Netflix projects, the Game of Thrones pair said in a statement to Deadline, so we are regretfully stepping away. This news was dumped the same day that HBO gave the news that they're not going to continue with the pilot for the prequel based on the Age of Heroes in Westeros. Naomi Watts-led prequel, often referred to as Blood Moon, is canned. It's not a big surprise since it was supposed to give us the secrets of the White Walkers, but we found that the secret of the White Walkers was that Arya could stab the Night King, and that would be enough. Kill them all forever. So with Benioff and Weiss getting $50 million a year to develop shows with Netflix, and Netflix owning almost no fantasy medieval properties except for one, what are they going to do? I think the obvious answer is that they're going to start helping with The Witcher Season 2. The current showrunner, Lauren S. Hissrich, has really no experience at this level, and they're putting Game of Thrones type money into each episode in what is obviously going to be a very high special effects production, much like Game of Thrones, with many of the same themes. Now, obviously, Dan and Dave are terrible writers. That's why they come to the top of the Google search. But they did a pretty good job adapting Game of Thrones and the Song of Ice and Fire novels that were already written. The good thing about the Witcher franchise is that all the 8 books are written. There are no more books that need to be written to finish the story. Indeed, you can finish the story with the first 7 books that were written. And Hissrich and her team of writers are already hired, so hopefully Dan and Dave will not be writing the whole scripts as they said they were the Austin Film Festival. So they've taken a lot of criticism since that was released, and a lot of people think that today's announcement of their separation from Star Wars is a function of what they said there. My personal take is, yes, they admitted that they were amateurs when they started out and that they did a lot of stupid things. Nevertheless, Lucasfilm has probably known they were not up to the task for a long time, and they chose today, the day when they released the trailer for their new Disney Plus TV series, Mandalorian, to avoid a lot of the negative press associated with Dan and Dave's exit. And HBO wanted to minimize their negative press with the canceling of the Blood Moon pilot, dumping that story today when the D&D news came out. The truth is that the best properties besides The Witcher are owned by other networks. Amazon has The Lord of the Rings. They've got The Wheel of Time. Of course, HBO owns Game of Thrones. So what are Dan and Dave going to develop? I think you're going to find that The Witcher is going to say, from the creators of Game of Thrones. There has been news that they are changing the shooting locations in season 2, and that's a good sign that there is a management change in the works for the TV series. So Benioff and Weiss have really been kind of on parallel tracks with Lauren Hissrich's The Witcher, in the sense that they were supposed to be at the San Diego Comic Con in July. They chickened out because they knew everybody was going to just rip them apart. So they went to this obscure place this weekend, the Austin Film Festival, which is really not the Comic Con audience. And they said a lot of things that made them seem amateurish. The same weekend that Lauren Hissrich is going to the MCM Comic Con in London, and they're previewing the show. They showed 2 new clips during that. One which featured a character that's not in the books, but is there to flesh out more of Ciri's character, this character named Dara, this young man that Ciri meets while she's on the run. Another clip with Yennefer and this dead baby, this dead princess, and her monologue with that unfortunate child. So while The Witcher was getting 20 million views to be the 5th most viewed video on YouTube by Netflix, at the San Diego Comic Con when its teaser was released, and they're going to release the trailer this weekend in Lucca, Italy, Benioff and Weiss ran out of town. A month later, they signed a $250 million deal with Netflix, who really wants The Witcher to be the next Game of Thrones. And I think their thinking was that they needed to hire Benioff and Weiss to do that. Now that Benioff and Weiss have nothing on their plate except Netflix, I think we're going to see them taking a more active role in The Witcher and going back to what made them famous, adapting medieval fantasy novels for TV. I thought the Blood Moon pilot was the most likely of all the successors to Game of Thrones to come out after The Witcher. Amazon seems like it's a long ways away from producing either the Wheel of Time show, which we'll see how that goes, or the Lord of the Rings show. Now, I'm told that the Wheel of Time, I've not read the trilogy. I've played all the Witcher games, and I've read all the books for The Witcher. I think that's a great franchise. The Witcher books, in my opinion, they're better reads than George R.R. Martin's The Song of Ice and Fire. And I've read every book related to the world of Westeros that's been written by George R.R. Martin and his co-authors. But Andrzej Sapkowski, the Polish author, is a much better, much more entertaining, popular market writer than George R.R. Martin. Martin's a genius, but Sapkowski's writing is more in line with, I think, what popular culture would enjoy. And of course, the Witcher games have sold 40 million copies and certainly hit a popular market. So Freya, Allan, and Lauren Hissrich were at the London Comic Con, at the Lucca Comics and Games Festival. Sapkowski will be there. The production designer, the producer of The Witcher, Lauren Hissrich, also Yennefer, Anya Shalatra will be there. Anya Shalatra and Freya Allan, Yennefer and Ciri in the show are also scheduled to be in Madrid on December 16th, I believe. That's the day, or December 15th, and that's like the day before the premiere, which they announced in London, will be on December 16th. So all signs look like that the digital premiere, when you can actually watch The Witcher, is December 17th. And that seems like a year before any of these other fantasy TV shows are going to come out. Subscribe for the latest news on medieval fantasy TV such as Game of Thrones and The Witcher.